This is the EndZone. Let's move the chains. I have a lot of questions right now about the College Football Playoff Selection Committee first ever rankings. And you should too, because something fishy is going on here. I'm not a total fan. I'm not totally on board with these first initial rankings, but we're going to go through them. So Tulsa, 25, sitting with one loss. I think that's huge for Cincinnati more than anyone, because Cincinnati really needs somebody to help bolster their schedule. Iowa at 24. They have a close loss, I believe, to Northwestern. Might be wrong on that. I haven't watched too much Iowa football, but I know that Spencer Petras has kind of opened this offense up. They're sitting at 2 losses. And I know a lot of people think that there's a little bit of Big Ten bias in the rankings. We'll talk about that later. Oklahoma State, number 23. I never thought Oklahoma State was really that good. I thought they'd be better because I thought that Spencer Sanders would be that quarterback that they needed. He just hasn't turned out. He also got injured during the game, but I don't think he would have really even helped. Chuba Hubbard. Just Oklahoma State's kind of been a disappointment this season, especially after getting blown out versus Oklahoma. Auburn, 22. They're playing Alabama in the Iron Bowl this week. That's going to be a huge game. No matter what Auburn ranking is, they're always going to be competing with Alabama. 21 and 20. Coastal Carolina, Marshall, group of 5 teams. Coastal Carolina, I've watched them play. They're fun to watch. Watched them play last week. They had a close one. North Carolina, 19. Sitting with Sam Howell, heading up that offense. It's very explosive at times. They can have some disappointing games like Florida State. They play a little sloppy at times. Their defense is not really something they can hang their hat on. I think the Notre Dame game is either going to be a blowout on Notre Dame's side, or it's going to be a fairly close shootout. I don't think North Carolina can keep this game, though, in the 20s or the teens and try to win. Southern Cal, they're a heart attack to watch. You feel like a loss is coming because every game is so close and so down to the wire, especially the first 2. But, they're getting stuff rolling. They're undefeated. We really haven't seen them play much because they're in the Pac-12, and they started a little bit late. Texas, I think that's a pretty good ranking for Texas at 17. I want to see more of them this season. Wisconsin, coming off the disappointing loss against Northwestern. They were really manhandled. We thought that their offense would be really, really good this year. Were those first 2 games a lie? Possibly. 15, Oregon. All their games have been really close. I like Oregon talent-wise, but I don't really know if they have enough to get done. I had them ranked higher than 15 just because they're undefeated. But I understand ranking them at 15 because they're in the Pac-12. They haven't played as many games. They almost lost to a backup quarterback last week. Now at 14 is where I have my big problem. This is my first red flag, BYU. Cincinnati and BYU are the 2 top group of 5 teams. And BYU has an incredible star quarterback, star wide receivers. People don't talk about BYU's defense, but they've done nothing but shut teams down. They played 9 games, and I know they had a chance to play Washington. That would have helped, but they decided not to. I just don't get why BYU is ranked this low. I get strength of schedule, but they've played one less team over 500 than Cincinnati has, and they both have top 10 offenses and top 10 defenses. So I struggle to understand that. They also have Zach Wilson, probably one of, if not the best quarterbacks in all of college football. If you haven't watched him this year, go watch him throw it around the yard. The wide receivers are great. I think BYU is just going to have to add games to their schedule if they want to convince the committee. And that stinks because the committee says that they're watching all these games, but when you watch BYU, you know that they're better than a lot of these teams coming up ahead. Iowa State. Iowa State's tricky because they have the win over Oklahoma, but they lost to Louisiana. They're sitting at 2 losses, and they just have some questionable things going on. They're on a winning streak. They're playing a lot better. But 13, it just doesn't make sense that BYU is behind Iowa State. I think that's where I'm really confused initially. Indiana at 12, I feel like they're underranked. People were saying that there's a Big Ten bias in here, and again, we'll kind of talk about that later. But if anything, I think that Indiana should be ranked a little bit ahead because their one loss is to Ohio State, where they had every chance to win that game. They played a little bit sloppy. Ohio State, their secondary had a lot of problems, and Indiana really exploited that. And I feel that Indiana could be ranked a tad bit higher, possibly at number 10. Number 11, Oklahoma. You're rewarding Oklahoma for beating an Oklahoma State team that was never really that great to begin with. And I just don't get that. And if you're honoring head-to-head, Oklahoma lost to Iowa State. Oklahoma lost to Kansas State. I get that Oklahoma looked good against Oklahoma State, but I just don't see the number 11 ranking, especially over Indiana, over BYU. And number 10, Miami. Miami's had a lot of close games. They got blown out by Clemson. I feel like Oklahoma is a better team than Miami if they played head-to-head. BYU, maybe Iowa State. I think Indiana. I just don't see why you would have Oklahoma at 11, Miami at 10. And then here's one that does not make any sense at all. Number 9, Georgia. The committee says they're basing most of these rankings off of eye test. If anything, Georgia has not looked the part this season. We can talk about the games against Florida and Alabama. Getting wrecked, manhandled. You say, oh, they have a great defense. Well, Alabama, Florida, tore them to shreds. Last week against Mississippi State, one of the worst offenses in the SEC. They did not play well. They have a new quarterback. Maybe they're basing a lot of this off of JT Daniels' performance. But they have 2 losses, no marquee wins. I just don't get it. They haven't looked good this season. And then at number 8, Northwestern. I feel like you could put Northwestern in at the top 10 because of the win over Wisconsin, the fact that they're undefeated, the fact that their defense is incredible. It's very good. Their offense is all right. It's probably below average. But number 8, again, seems a little bit high. Like, I feel like if you put head-to-head BYU Northwestern, I would pick BYU in that game. Just because of the way college football is going, you got to have an offense to keep up with these teams. It looks like Northwestern is probably going to be playing Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship. And we've seen that happen before in the past couple of years. Northwestern, they always put up a fight. They're just one of those teams. And I get putting them in the top 10, but 8 seems a little bit high. Here's Cincinnati at 7. Okay, I understand it. Group of 5. You don't want to put them in front of Florida or Texas A&M. 6, Florida. 1 loss is to Texas A&M. But Florida has been playing some of their best football this year. Kind of after that, manhandling Georgia on national TV. A lot of people watched that game. And they're just going to honor that Texas A&M win over Florida. I understand that, and I talked about that in my initial rankings. I think that if you want to honor that win, go ahead, do it. Texas A&M blowout loss to Alabama, but the big win over Florida, they're going to say that the win matters more than the loss. Okay, I understand that, putting them outside at number 5, but they're likely going to get jumped by Florida because Florida's going to play Alabama in the SEC Championship, depending on how Florida plays. They're probably going to get jumped. Number 4, Ohio State. So Ohio State was kind of exposed against Indiana, and I understand moving them down to number 4. A lot of people had problems with moving Ohio State down or keeping them below Clemson, although Clemson has a loss. But Ohio State has a lot of problems on defense. Their offense is great, but they got to fix something in the secondary because Indiana tore them to shreds. And we talk about being in the top 4. A lot of these teams, you see Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama. If you think, well, Indiana, yes, they're a great passing team, but if Clemson played Ohio State, they could probably do a lot more damage against that secondary. That's all theoretical, but I understand putting Ohio State at number 4. They also play less games. Number 3, Clemson. The loss to Notre Dame, but the win against number 10, Miami. I think that's a good spot for them. The loss to Notre Dame, they're missing not only their quarterback, but a lot of players on defense. They're going to play each other again. So moving on to Notre Dame, number 2, big game against North Carolina. I like this ranking. I think a lot of people agree with number 2, Notre Dame, because they have that win over Clemson. Right now, the best win in the country, probably. And then at number 1, Alabama, sitting undefeated. On the eye test, they just look the best. The secondary has gotten a lot better. They have Patrick Surtain. Najee Harris, to me, is one of the best players in college football that nobody really talks about. I know Mac Jones is getting all the Heisman talk, but I think that Najee Harris is the real strength of this offense because Alabama can run the ball all over you. I'd like to know your opinions on the college football top 25 playoff rankings. Let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching the End Zone. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment so we can move the chains.